Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Could I ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the Cloverdale City Council meeting. Can we get a roll call, please?
Let the record reflect that all council members are present.
Thank you, sir. And our city attorney will be on Zoom tonight due to a family emergency. Conflict of interest declarations, anything from anyone? Okay. And any changes or deletions to the agenda?
No changes or deletions, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to public comments. Any person wishing to speak to the City Council on any item not listed on the agenda may do so at this time. Members of the public have the right to speak on any item on the council agenda at the time the item comes up for consideration. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. 3 minutes are typically allotted to each speaker. Do we have anyone in our audience? Please come on up.
Hi there. Happy New Year. Happy 2023 to the City Council, city staff, interested parties, audience, etc., etc. My point tonight, I am Nina Hanchat. I am talking tonight as the Executive Director of the Cloverdale Chamber of Commerce. And even though it feels like 100 years ago, I wanted to thank everybody for their help for Winter Festival. This involves city leadership, the mayor, businesses, volunteers. It was an amazing endeavor. It involved the whole community, Mayor, you know that. And the city departments, Public Works, everybody rolled up their shirt sleeves and did it. Police department, you were actually first on my list, but just saying. And we couldn't do it without everybody. It just wouldn't happen. And it was a perfect night. A lot of people showed up, a lot of interest, a lot of people saying, well, you should do it. You should do this again next year and make it bigger and faster. And okay, sure enough. So I just wanted to say thank you without using all my 3 minutes. You know how grateful I am.
Thank you, Nina. And I think that we can make a brief comment about this. Thank you for everything you did on this with the chamber and your chamber. The whole crew that you brought out was amazing.
Yeah, we did.
Along with the city. It was great. And on that, I want to congratulate the Ewing family from 468 Gamma for the winner of the light contest.
She applied last year too, but it was pretty amazing. I mean, they were all amazing. Just one more thing. I'm going to leave in a little bit because I have no voice, and nobody doesn't like to not have me have no voice. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Seeing no hands, anyone in the virtual world?
Thank you, Mayor. No one's raising their hand at this time.
Thank you, Mike. We'll move on. Communications. Council may discuss at this time written communications sent to the council members since the last council meeting. Written communications to be discussed will be listed below. There's none listed below. David, do we have any?
No communications, Mayor.
Right. Student liaison. Sorry to inform everyone, the student is sick. She is home tonight and let us know, so we wished her well. She'll be hopefully back at the next meeting. E, consent calendar. All items under the consent calendar will be considered together by one action of the City Council unless any council member or member of the public requests that an item be removed and considered separately.
Mayor, I'd like to move the consent calendar.
Does anybody want anything pulled? Anyone want a second? I'll second. All right. We have a first and a second when you're ready.
Sorry to figure out my alphabet again.
Oh, we had Councilmember Bagby and then Vice Mayor Walter.
Thank you. So with that, we'll start with the motion. Councilmember Bagby?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Walter?
Aye.
Councilmember Morgenstern?
Aye.
Councilmember Wheeler?
Aye.
And Mayor Lands.
Aye.
Consent calendar passes, 5 ayes.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to G, new business. G1, resolution ratifying the Director of Emergency Services proclamation declaring the existence of a local emergency. David?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. For this item, we're going to provide council really an overview of the current storm event, and that'll provide the kind of the background information related to the requested action that we're asking council to do tonight, which is to ratify the Director of Emergency Services, which is your city manager's proclamation that was made on January 5th, proclaiming or declaring the existence of a local emergency, and this is related to the January storm event, which is continuing and ongoing, and potential for high-risk flood and landslide weather conditions. So with that, I'm going to do a share screen here, Michael, and see if I can do that through Zoom. Okay, staff is going to walk through council a presentation update on what we're referring to is the late 2022, early 2023 storm event. Really, the current storm event was initiated really starting on about December 26th, and obviously it's January 11th and it's continuing. What we saw during that time frame is a fairly significant amount of precipitation. Our senior wastewater operator at the Cloverdale wastewater treatment plant monitors the amount of rainfall that is received at our wastewater treatment plant. What you see here is a reflection of that data collection. At our wastewater treatment plant, we've received, starting on December 28th through yesterday, 16.3 inches of rain, and that's a really significant amount of rain in context. Just for reference, the image that you see to the left of the data is a current satellite imagery dated today that is reflecting the storm activity out in the Pacific Ocean, and is indicative that the storm event is going to continue. The green bubbles that you see there is lightning, and I think that's all something we've witnessed with some of the thunder activity. So in terms of the current situation in Sonoma County, the city of Cloverdale, town of Windsor, city of Petaluma, as well as the Sonoma County Fire District have proclaimed local emergencies. So we're not the only entity that has declared a local emergency. In fact, we followed Sonoma County. Since then, there's been a presidential declaration approved for the California flooding event. We've certainly, I'm sure, seen the news. Oh, which is for emergency protective measures, and we'll go into a little bit about that. It's referred to as Category B. That's a FEMA designation. Likewise, the governor's office has also issued an emergency proclamation. It's non-specific to any county in response to the winter storms, but Sonoma County is considered to be covered by that emergency proclamation. There was a evacuation order that was made for the area between Healdsburg and Jenner, issued by the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. Since that time, since it's originally the warning was put into place, it has since been lifted, but nonetheless, a number of concerns still continue. In particular, there's a number of customers across what we refer to as the operational area. It's a term that we use for defining our emergency area, which is our county, are continuing to be without power. Particularly, there's a lot of loss of power on the coast. The coast was particularly impacted by the storm event. And as a result, the county did open an evacuation center at the county fairgrounds. A lot of that was for RVs that could relocate to a safe location. The Sonoma County Emergency Services Director has proclaimed a local emergency. You know, has since been ratified by the Board of Supervisors. There is a hotline that's been established to assist residents, particularly in the lower Russian River, where we see a lot of historic flooding that need help. I think there's been a couple of RVs that have made their way to our local citrus fair. And likewise, a community support center has been established at the Fort Ross Visitor Center to help with things like charging their phones and providing resources. In terms of the outlook for the current weather event, we are seeing the potential for continued rain and flooding in the North Bay through Monday the 16th, and I think even beyond that at this point. What we see, one of the things we do is look very closely and track NOAA gauges at key locations, particularly in Healdsburg and in the lower river. What this identifies is whether we're going to start to see flooding in the lower elevations, and if we do, it's generally indicative we're going to start seeing more flooding besides some of the localized flooding in the upper portion of the watershed. Here, the Russian River was projected to peak Saturday the 14th at about 6 p.m. So we're kind of seeing an upswing in the level of flows within the Russian River, both in terms of the stage in feet, but also the volumetric flow in terms of cubic feet per second. So assuming the rain holds as forecasted, we'll see that rise. As of now, it's not predicted to flood at Healdsburg. Unfortunately, not the same in Guerneville. We are seeing it peak. Really, it peaked yesterday, and it just touched on that flood levels. We see that in some of the news reports. Generally, it's at this point, we're not seeing severe damage in the lower watershed, and it's being managed by Sonoma County. And I know there's a number of challenges because with the storm, there's also high wind, which has taken out a number of trees particularly that were impacted by drought conditions, and that's caused havoc with power losses and impacts to local roads and streets. So what I'd like to do is really acknowledge Chief Ferguson. Chief has taken on a leadership role in terms of emergency preparedness and done a lot of work to prepare the city for emergency events, and including preparing for this storm. So Chief, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you at this point.
So these next two slides are really intended to kind of give the council, particularly the two new members of the council, a better understanding of how the city prepares for emergencies like this once we start becoming familiar with what lies ahead. One of the things that happened right away is an all-hands-on-deck meeting, which included members of Public Works, the Water Department, the Parks Department, police, fire, and other members of city staff. And it's really designed to do a check-in to see if we are prepared with storm gear, equipment, things that we're going to need to have ready to go if we're going to help our public. And so it's important that we're first and foremost ready to go. And that included fueling all vehicles, ordering additional fuel that we may need, as well as checking equipment like generators and our chainsaws. As you know, we have our repeater generator is up on Vista, which has to be run on a generator, a very small one. If we lose power, that's how we have to operate. So we have to make sure that's running and fueled up. Pre-positioning equipment is really important. Road closures, park closure signs, things of that nature. All of these are addressed in that meeting for the sole purpose of mitigation efforts to ensure that we're worried about those hazards, and we're trying to reduce those hazards to keep our public safe. And then moving on, rain check storm drains, recheck storm drains, and ensure that they are clear of debris. Next slide. So on this next one here, this kind of gives you an idea of how things kind of went down, and I want to back up just a little bit. We really started monitoring this at the end of December, right before the first of the year. And then when January 2nd, we got the briefing that the storm coming in on the 4th was going to be fairly significant with atmospheric river conditions. That's what then prompted this meeting to get going. But ahead of that, we also did some steps to get officers out to the River Park area to ensure that there weren't any encampments or any homeless individuals out there that would be stranded just like they were previously. We had the swiftwater rescue. We certainly wanted to avoid that circumstance again. And then another big key piece of this was to call a Zoom meeting with our resilient Cloverdale COAD, which is our community organizations active in disaster, which we've been building for 3 years since the Kincaid fire. And the purpose of collaborating and getting them ready is in the event we needed to open the Citrus Fair as a shelter. They've got an org chart, they're ready to respond, they're ready to help. So they were ready and on standby, as well was the Citrus Fair. So all those notifications went out, and we were fully prepared. And we'll respond the same way, whether it's fire, flood. We have a good plan now in play on how we're going to do this moving forward. And from that point, we moved to getting communication and collaborating with Public Works and everybody to put out a nixle that included the information we wanted to have, which was an overview of the events that we were expecting, steps on how to prepare our community and how they can be prepared, as well as where to find resources, sandbag stations, and how they can utilize that, where to get sandbags. And let's see, what else? And then we gave an update of the weather and what park closures and when those are going to take place so that our community was aware. And then we decided at that time we didn't have enough information on the storm that merited a full opening of an emergency operations center. So there's 3 different levels. We chose the lower level, which was we referred to as a duty status, which would require any calls where we have any unmet needs that the county needed to step in. They would contact me. We would notify the county's Department of Emergency Management, request any of those items that we might need, and move forward from there. We've remained on duty status since this storm began, and we'll continue on this until we feel confident that we're clear from it and move past it. And I think David pretty much covered everything else in there. We've covered all the storm activity from the Department of Emergency Management since it started. I think today you got your 10th update.
Yeah.
And I'll just report this last thing, what our city dispatch center has done and what we've received since this started. And I put the dates of January 3rd through the 9th because we didn't receive any calls after the 9th to this point. We had 30 different calls. 8 were related to debris, tree or branches down. 7 were related to what I call standing water, significant enough to merit calls and concerns. Sandbag questions were 5 of those. 4 were public works related. 1 was an alarm, and 5 were miscellaneous. So it's not a large amount of calls, and what I'm very happy about that is obviously people are being more resilient, and they're taking care of themselves. I know the city's doing its part to mitigate those up front. So, but I just wanted to provide that to you and how we're going to move forward. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. And I do want to mention that Chief also coordinated and collaborated with our Citrus Fair. We've been building our relationship with the Citrus Fair as part of our care and shelter branch of our Emergency Operations Center. The council has approved $5,000 in funding in our budget that can go towards any kinds of emergency supplies, should that be needed to ensure that they've got all the supplies or food if called upon to open up as a shelter location. And Chief has handled all the coordination, collaboration with the Citrus Fair director. And I thought that was good preparation. We certainly, early on, didn't know to what extent the storm event was going to impact Sonoma County, and we took all actions to get prepared for this event. With that said, we have had some fairly significant, in my mind, some fairly significant impacts, and as a result have had to take some action to respond to those events. One of our major local emergency action was to engage in a riverbank. It's just projections on the screen, but a protection and a well protection project. On January 5th, we saw the level of the Russian River rise fairly significantly, and concurrently, a fairly significant flows from Sulphur Creek, which is directly adjacent to our water treatment plant, and started witnessing undermining and erosion of the bank that was in relative close proximity to well 13. And so we engaged in a project, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly, to protect that bank. And we did that under our role as declaring a local emergency. Likewise, we started to hear concerns from residents about the culvert at 3rd Street and potential for flooding. And we engaged in a debris removal project there. And our Public Works Director is going to talk a little bit about that. We did see some flooding at our Cloverdale Airport, which necessitated the closure of the airport due to that flooding. Drainage is an issue at our airport. It's actually a long-term capital improvement project that we'd like to engage in with FAA funding to help improve the drainage. Though it just happens that there's adjacent creeks that flow into the Russian there that tend to top their banks. Likewise, as I mentioned, the high wind events, we did see some tree damage at City Park, which affected our Scouts cabin roof, and that was something we're continuing to respond to and plan on addressing in the near future. So a little bit about the Riverbank Protection Well Protection Project. Again, we conducted an inspection on January 5th, saw fairly high water levels, and based on the conditions within the river, it appeared that the area adjacent to our well 13, which is our most northerly well within our well field, could be subject to imminent failure. And we took fairly quick action to engage in a contract to place material, protective material along that bank to protect the bank and protect the well. And I think, it very well could have likely affected the main trail of River Park as well if we didn't take prompt action, and even potentially well 14. I think the cost of doing that work, to replace that damage would be much more significant than what it would have cost to do the mitigation work. So a little bit of pictures here that show the work that was performed. We placed approximately 270 to 300 tons of half to 1 ton boulders along roughly a 100 linear foot section of the riverbank adjacent to well 13. We did some collaboration with Sonoma Water as well as Johannes Hovertz, the Director of Public Infrastructure for Sonoma County. They did a similar project in Geyserville to protect critical infrastructure. And using his professional knowledge, we kind of followed the specification of placing the 1 ton boulders at the base and building it up from there. What you can see from these pictures is how significant the water level is relative to the edge of bank. I have other pictures where literally most of the rock material that we place is actually underwater. So that would have really been indicative that we would have received more flooding, and given the bank material, I think we would have probably lost a fairly significant amount of that bank and would be dealing with a lot of damage at this point. And again, we're not all the way through this event yet, as you'll see, we're still expecting to have quite a bit more rain over the coming weeks. I'm going to try here, see if I can share a video. Let's see if I'm able to do it. Our senior water operator, and I want to really acknowledge the work that our senior water operator, Darren Hernandez, and our water operator, Trevor Anderson, performed. They worked all day on Friday last week, but likewise all day on Saturday, coordinating the work with our local contractor. And let's see if we can pull this little video up here. This kind of shows the project as he's doing a walk along here. Luckily, Saturday
This morning, the
was...
site looks the same as yesterday, so held up great through the night and through the storm.
Wanted to share that video. We really monitor it very closely. Again, I've seen pictures where most of that rock material has been inundated with water. It's right on the confluence with Oak Creek as well. In the 2019 storm event, there was quite a bit of flooding and damage to our wells from Oak Creek. And I think what we really need to look at here is a long-term solution for some of the amount of gravel material in Russian, particularly coming out of Sulphur Creek. There's during periods of the storm event, really high flows coming out, and I think what's happening is it's pushing a lot of that gravel material down into the river, and it's leading to an increased elevation of the floodplain right adjacent to our treatment plant. And it's obviously there's a lot of complexity with the hydraulic flows and water movement in the Russian, but it's definitely an area that I think requires further evaluation. It's beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but there's probably some long-term programs that need to be developed in cooperation, coordination with the county to really look at how those gravel beds are going to be managed, because this is something we could otherwise be struggling with going forward. With that said, we also responded to what was otherwise a lot of concern expressed by residents on East 3rd Street. We know there's an existing culvert that we've traditionally done maintenance underneath that culvert to remove gravel. There have been challenges in performing that work in past years, and of course we've been in significant drought. But we entered into a contract to perform some emergency debris removal. What you see in these pictures is a picture of a backhoe that was able to reach down and clear the debris on both the entrances and exits. I want to acknowledge our Public Works Director. Has been trialed by flood for Derek. Derek oversaw and coordinated the work. And what we want to kind of reflect too here is, there was a lot of effort made to ensure that the residents could continue to pass by safely. And what you see is the Sonoma County Transit bus making its way by when the work was being performed. We removed about, the estimate's about 30 cubic yards of material, which have helped improve flow conditions under that culvert. So I'd like to provide our Public Works Director an opportunity to, there's been some other actions. I know that he's been very busy this week with our Public Works team, our wastewater team, our water team, as well as our streets team. And, Derek, welcome to your first council meeting. Always fun to jump in on an emergency. You've been working hard. Go ahead and share with council what some of the things you've been doing the last week.
Thank you, David. Yeah, we've been doing a lot along with these other projects. Last Wednesday, the guys were out till 8:30 at night, maintaining stormwater, drains, everything, checking on sandbags, making sure that we supply residents with sandbags, sand through the city park. Checking multiple erosion spots. We spent some of the weekend attending to concerns that citizens had about storm drains, storm waters, and runoff like that. At the wastewater plant, Jay and Anthony are dealing with the river rising, so the water table's going up, so they're keeping a a good eye on the influx of water there. Our roads crew for my first 2 weeks, well, all the guys have been very pivotal. We have Dylan Mills and Curtis Waller. Those guys are suits on in the rain every day, getting it done, and they're just helping me out so much by being there and making sure everything's getting done. And Craig Johnson, with more than 31 years with the city, he's just a wealth of knowledge, and he's just helping me kind of get my bearings and all that stuff. And Darren and Trevor at the water treatment plant, you know, they're doing de-aeration, they're helping with the rocks, and we just have just such a great crew backing us up. I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. And you know, from an operational perspective, the storm does present challenges for our water treatment plant. There's a lot of with all the stormwater, there's a lot of dissolved oxygen that's in the water, and that requires additional processes in terms of treatment. And so it requires our operators to respond to that and you know, do additional treatment processes at the plant. And I just want to acknowledge the amount of time they've had to spend, you know, one doing the emergency protective project, but also responding to these high water conditions, you know, all the while keeping their eye out for how the storm events can, you know, could impact our critical infrastructure. So with that, and you know, out of significant concerns about the weather forecast and looking what was ahead of us on Thursday, January 5th, issued a proclamation declaring a local state of emergency. This followed the county's action. Under the Emergency Services Act, the issuance of a proclamation or declaring a local emergency does require ratification by the City Council within 7 days. Ultimately, if council decides and agrees with staff's recommendation to approve a resolution ratifying the proclamation, it will, one of the benefits is that it will enable the city to seek disaster aid relief. And with that said, we, particularly I want to also acknowledge our finance team. Shannon Peterson coordinated cost estimates by all of our departments, particularly looking at the debris removal costs, the emergency protective measures, the overtime, to compile an initial damage estimate that gets submitted to Cal OES. Ultimately, that will, and we anticipate, will support our efforts to get reimbursed for our disaster response. Typically, you can get up to 75% of the costs, and sometimes a full 100%. So we had to respond fairly quickly to get our initial damage estimates in, which were submitted this week. Just yesterday, right now we are showing expenses totaling $171,800. So it's no small amount of change it takes to respond to these kinds of events. Likely that cost will grow with time. Likewise, we're also requested to submit a IDE, as you call it, to Caltrans, or to California Department of Transportation. And so there's a little difference in the two forms, but both of those have been submitted. And usually there's quite a bit of work, as you can imagine. It's not like the state cuts a check. They do a lot of checking and really drill down pretty deep on what are all the projects we undertook, how do we respond before ultimately getting reimbursement. It does take time, too, to get reimbursed. So in terms of going forward, we're going to continue to monitor the storm events pretty much daily. It's been over the last 13 days now. We've been on daily calls with Sonoma County Department of Emergency Management. Thank you, Chief. He's always doing the report out on behalf of the City of Cloverdale. So we'll continue that. And the action requested tonight is that council adopt a resolution ratifying our emergency proclamation. In doing so, it will be necessary to bring back the agreement. It was an emergency agreement that we approved with Anderson Excavation for the work that was performed. So we'll seek council approval for those agreements. And likewise, we'll continue to coordinate with Cal OES on seeking disaster assistance. So the hope is we'll get full recovery for all costs that we expend related to this storm event. Unfortunately, I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. But I think staff is doing their best to address the impacts and try to be forward-thinking and forward-looking in terms of what potential impacts there are and respond accordingly. So that really concludes staff's report. I'm going to stop sharing here. And again, there is an agenda report, gives you an overview of some of the activities that led up to disaster proclamation. And staff, again, is requesting or recommending that council adopt the resolution ratifying the proclamation declaring a local emergency.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Derek and Chief, for your presentation. This is loud. All right, back to the council. Any questions, comments, concerns? Councilman Bagley, would you like to go first?
Certainly. Honestly, I came with about, probably 3 or 4 higher level questions, and then was probably going to pepper you with a couple of little details. And honestly, the presentation was so thorough by you and the chief, and I'm sure our new Public Works Director, who is being tested, as all Public Works Directors should be ultimately. It's just one heck of a welcome, Derek, because that's just, just as an anecdote, I know you mentioned, I wasn't going to say anything, but you mentioned Johannes, one of our local residents who is the Sonoma County Public Works Director. He was sworn in the morning of the 2017 fire, so hey, just, pick which one you want. But I just wanted to thank all of our senior staff. I know how hard you've been working, and obviously, our staff on the ground have just been superlative as usual. I also just want to commend your leadership, you and your staff, David, for taking the leadership on protecting Well 13. It's so easy to become complacent during drought, but that was an immediate and necessary thing. And it's unfortunately, I think our staff has become really good at handling emergencies at this point. So well done. So I don't have a lot of questions because, again, the thoroughness of your report and your explanation of the actions that were taken were very thorough. So I'm sure there'll be other comments from the council, but I'm happy to move the item this evening.
Councilmember Morgenstern, any comments, questions, anything?
I want to know, because we didn't open the Citrus Fair, what happened to the unsheltered people living along the river?
Chief, you want to respond to contacts?
So I can only answer for Cloverdale. When the officers went out there, they were unable to contact or locate any encampments in our area. But shelters were provided in the county's jurisdiction. And I will double check for potentially a next report and have an answer for you about what the numbers are that came into those facilities, because they do provide those as well. So we have a better understanding of how many folks showed up there.
As for the county section, the Sheriff's Department did go out. They made contact with anyone they could. A lot of them had moved to higher ground. And as of today, there's only one person that is back down on the river currently. So they seek higher ground.
Well, and the other piece of that too is that, and the chief should really be commended for this too, the word got out that there were free bus passes to the shelter in Healdsburg, and I know at least one person, I stopped and I talked with a couple of people in the plaza, and they had taken advantage of it, and they were headed south. So I think just, again, from past experience, people took action to make themselves safe. So that was a really great program, and you were out in front of the curve on that, and you should really be commended for that. That was a really great job getting those bus passes out so people could get to Healdsburg. So thanks for everybody's hard work on that.
Wheeler.
I just have a quick question, probably for Derek over here on the, I know they have the one station for the sandbags over at City Park, and that can get tight over there turning around. You get a lot of people, if if they do need sandbags, 3 or 4 cars in there, you're starting to run into a traffic issue up there. Just wondering what the possibility is of maybe setting up maybe South Foothill Boulevard or a location down in that section of town and keeping the one at City Park. And so we have the folks in town have 2 options if they really need sandbags.
Yeah, we can definitely look into something like that. Preferably keeping it, maybe in a larger open area of parks, right?
Yeah.
So we can look into that, and then maybe some barricades with lights and stuff.
Berber would be a good candidate for that, for a south. And actually, if I was going to pepper you with questions, I was going to wonder, just because we have the tree down in City Park, I know that that's a point of concern. That could become choked and inaccessible very easily.
Right.
So yeah, it might be a good idea to have a redundant site.
Exactly. We'll put that on our list.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a big thank you to staff. A lot of work and well thought out. I just had a couple silly questions. That's a heck of a lot of rock. Where did we get that on such short notice? Where did Anderson get that?
Geyserville Bridge?
I mean, that's a lot of rock. I'd just kind of be curious where he laid his hands on it like that quick.
But Vice Mayor Walter, I have to ask our water operator the specific location where our contractor procured the material. I know it was relatively close, but it did require trucking. Some of the material just happened, we have some really great local contractor firms that had some of the material available, but it was also because of the work that our team took to make contact and arrange for the material to be available. That takes work and time. So, that was, some of that preparation work that was taken to identify material and then, having a contractor that could also respond very quickly locally was tremendously beneficial. So I really do want to acknowledge our local contractor community and being positioned to respond to our need fairly quickly, because they're not always available. So we had both the contract team and materials to be able to do it. And again, the acknowledgement of our county public works director, and he even brought the county geologist out to. He took time out of his busy day responding to emergency events in the county to come do an inspection twice, one with the geologist, and they, I got the thumbs up that the way it was being performed was right on target with how it would be spec'd if we had, months of developing plans and specs for it. So I'm really proud of how it turned out, and it was done with a lot of professionalism.
And then I just wanted to make a comment about the 3rd Street Bridge. I think that's probably the most thorough cleanup that we've had of that culvert in years. And I know we've had a lot of residents complaining about the flooding there. And so hats off for getting that done. And then lastly, I know Councilmember Bagby will surely remember a couple of years ago when we lost I believe it's the airport dike that's up against the river, and all that rock just came washing in onto the airport property. So that did not happen this year, even though we're getting a lot of flooding down there. Is that right?
That's correct, Vice Mayor. The storms of 2019 were particularly impactful in northern Sonoma County, and it really blew out the levee.
Yeah.
Where the flooding that has occurred there this year is primarily internal. It's not from the Russian per se. The adjacent creeks just experiencing significant outflow, which has deposited debris, but it's not to the extent like the 2019 storm event where we had a very significant levee break and flooding.
Well, once again, a good job on everything to staff and all, and ready to move the item forward also.
Actually, just one more comment. You reminded me, Vice Mayor, that issue with Sulphur Creek churning out gravel is just not going to go away. So I don't know. I know you mentioned that we need to pursue that at a different time, but if we need to add that to a future agenda item, that's an issue that's not going to go away. It's going to continue to affect the wells and potentially airport properties as well. So that's probably something we need to look at when we're not at flood stage at some point.
First thing I want to say is the reason we were so successful with our response didn't start because we started on January 5th. It's because you guys have been working for years with the COAD, with CERT, with all the fire things, and everybody looked at it as the fire and the drought. And a lot of people were complacent when it came to flooding issues. But we continued to keep our creeks clean, our culverts clean, and worked really hard and prepared for these types of emergencies. And you look back 25 years ago, this wasn't an emergency. This was normal weather that we have. And so, but when you don't see rain for a few years, it's hard to be prepared for it. But our staff was amazing. You were available at all times. The chief has been on 24 hours a day since the 3rd, I believe it was. It's seeing everyone come together, whether it was the park staff, the water staff, everyone throughout the streets crew, everyone working together hand in hand instead of in their own departments to protect our town, keep the drains clean, keep the culverts clean, keep the bridges clean, and things along those lines. Seeing their new public works director have to walk in boots in his first day is pretty crazy. So I can't thank you guys enough. When it comes to Sulphur Creek, Councilmember Bagby, I've already started the ball rolling with that one. The Sonoma County Water Agency is starting to work with us because it's illegal for the county to allow that much sediment. There's certain numbers and ratios they're allowed to come down into the riverbed, and it is so far above that now that the county is saying, okay, you're right, we need to start working on this. So that ball's rolling, we're working on it, and the goal is to start, just north of Sulphur Creek and start paying attention to how much we can take out of the riverbed without screwing up the riverbed. They have stream management, I think is the wording that they're using for it. They calculated Sulphur Creek at 7,000 cubic feet per second rushing towards the bank. So if you think about that, that is a lot of water that is blowing straight at well 13, which is why we had to do what we did. You have Oak Creek and that one coming in together, and when the excavator would sit on the side trying to place those rocks, you could see it moving up and down from the ground pumping so much, from the water hitting it, and just the pressure. It was so saturated that it was ready to cave in. And we probably would have lost the well if we did not do what we did, the swift action of our city staff. So I can't thank you guys enough. With that, I will open it up to the public. Anyone in the audience have anything they would like to say? Seeing no hands, we'll go to the virtual.
You Mayor, no one's raising their hands online either.
Thank you, sir. We'll bring it back to the dais. Does anyone want to make a motion?
One more, well, actually, there already is a motion on the table, but one more question for staff too, and if I've missed this, I apologize. I know that we did need to close City Park and Porterfield. What's the status on that? And are we just going to be in a wait and see mode if we're still closed?
Yeah, those, both City Park, Porterfield Creek, as well as Cloverdale River Park continue to be closed. Largely, it's out of abundance of caution because we keep experiencing these high wind events, and we want to ensure that those are safe places to visit. So it's really kind of wait and see when we are going to have some clearance in the storm, so we can assess. Our city arborists can take a look. Primarily, it's a tree issue. We don't want to put any of our park users in an unsafe place. So once the storm clears, being able to conduct an assessment to see if there's any unsafe trees and or other conditions like we had where we had flooding and there was a lot of debris. And so we don't have a date certain at this point, but I know there's a lot of interest in visiting our park, so we'll endeavor to get those back open as soon as we.
And then how's the cemetery and the hill above the water treatment plant looking?
I don't know if we've done an assessment. We'll take a look at that. That generally seems like an area that's pretty solid, but again, the trees in that location with the high winds again, something we just want to.
I'm sure people are going to be anxious to want to go out and see the river soon, but just when it's safe, so, and, yeah, thank you.
Anyone want to make a motion?
There is already a motion on the table. I'm happy to recommend the item by title only. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Cloverdale ratifying the Director of Emergency Services proclamation declaring the existence of a local emergency related to the January 2023 storm event and high-risk flood and landslide weather conditions.
Second.
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Motion and a second. When you're ready with roll call, please.
Mayor. Start in alphabetical order with Councilmember Bagby,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgenstern,
Aye.
Councilmember Wheeler,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Walter,
Aye.
and Mayor Lands.
Aye.
The item passes with 5 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on, G2, review and discussion of updated City Council 2023 Subcommittee, Joint Committee, and Regional Board Committee appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. Council may recall at your December 9th meeting in 2022, distributed preference indication worksheets for council members to identify by priority their preferences for seats on the 6 subcommittees, as well as preferences for a host of regional boards and or liaison roles. I received those worksheets, those preference indication worksheets back from all of the council members, and based on the guidelines that had previously presented to council, made some preliminary draft recommendations for subcommittee appointments as well as regional board appointments. Those are included in the agenda packet for your review and consideration. Just briefly to touch on the guidelines that were utilized to develop those recommendations. The first was really to try to provide for parity in terms of the workload by recommending each of you to sit on two council subcommittees. Made every effort to assign a council member to their first or number one choice. And if it was your first choice and it fell to another council member, then you were recommended for your second highest choice. I also sought to seek opportunities for continuity between the existing council members or the subcommittee makeup for 2022 and 2023, just to provide for some continuity. That's not always able to accomplish with 2 new council members, but that was really the basis for the recommendations. And then really with the regional boards, it's really an preference as to whether you want to sit on those boards, and in some cases council members maybe didn't indicate that it was something they desired to do. But there may be a recommendation because in some cases regional boards require a primary and an alternate. The preference indication worksheets are included in the package. Like our city clerk is going to go ahead and bring those up now for council review. And we'll walk through. So in the packet is the go back one. Yeah, or go down one page. So based on that criteria, the recommended appointments for your 6 subcommittees, starting with Finance, Admin, and Police, is Mayor Lands and Councilmember Bagby, followed by Planning and Sustainability. It's Councilmember Bagby and Vice Mayor Walter. Third, for Public Works and Facilities, Vice Mayor Walter with Councilmember Wheeler. Did acknowledge that that many of you ranked the Joint City Cloverdale Fire District in 5th and 6th position. So I was thinking that it might be an opportunity to look at whether you want to combine that subcommittee with another subcommittee or eliminate it, and just do some coordination with the board on as needed, without setting the dates and times. Moving forward, the Joint City School, or Cloverdale Unified School District, Mayor Lands and Councilmember Morgenstern, and then last but not least, our Homeless Community Advisory Group, Councilmember Wheeler and Councilmember Bornstein. What I attempted to do with my recommendation was also, for the most part, try to assign the first name listed is a suggested chair of that subcommittee. So that's something in your deliberations. One, obviously, if you agree with the recommendations that I set forth, who would be the chair. We'll note that. Ultimately, what we'll do, we'll bring this back at your next meeting and adopt it formally by resolution. Likewise, included in that resolution would be the proposed dates and times of the subcommittee meetings. A couple of things for council's consideration is we had a fairly robust meeting schedule in 2022, more robust than we've had in past years. In particular, thinking about the Public Works, we went from quarterly meetings to every month. Likewise, we also had homeless meetings every month, partly because that was leading up to the adoption of our homelessness strategic master plan. So some things to consider is whether council, I know it requires a lot of your time in council subcommittees if you want to kind of adjust the meeting occurrence timeframes for some of those meetings. One thought, if you do choose to do that, is there's always the opportunity, for instance, if we set Public Works on rather than a monthly meeting rotation, going back to every other month, if there's a critical issue, we can always schedule special meetings. And so that's always available to any subcommittee or even council, though we for transparency purposes, I wouldn't recommend just, doing every meeting as a special meeting. We really want to kind of have those scheduled, because I know our city clerk is very busy, and we found sometimes we were having 3 or 4, or even 4 subcommittee meetings, or 3 subcommittee meetings in a council meeting in 1 week, and we endeavor to get work done, and sometimes we spend a lot of time in meetings. But that's really for council to deliberate and consider. Again, you should see what recommended as a starting point, and council should deliberate. If you agree, good. But if you want to, make changes, just please identify what changes you'd like to make in the recommendations, and we'll bring those back at your next meeting.
Thank you, David. Who would like to start?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'm comfortable with everything on this first sheet that we're looking at. I'm a little disappointed that I'm off the finance and admin, but I understand. I've been on that for a few years. As far as the Cloverdale Fire District goes, I know we had talked about combining that with the Public Works, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe I'd like to see that as opposed to eliminating it altogether. It's a little difficult to have a meeting with the fire district when they don't participate as aggressively as we'd like to see them. I know they're busy over there, and it's difficult for them to get to meetings, but we're just having a meeting to talk to ourselves. So I'd like to see it combined with Public Works. I would still like to see the fire district submit 2 of their board members as participants on that committee as well, and they get a copy of the agenda. So that's my thought on that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Vice Mayor, I agree with you on that. I think that combining those two, once I have not been in one of those meetings, but I'm going to take your lead on that and see that maybe that would be a good idea to do the Public Works and the joint city Cloverdale Fire also on that. I was thinking of maybe moving those times from 1:30 to maybe later in the day, 4:30, 5 o'clock on that meeting. That would be my suggestion right there.
Sounds like you two are in agreement with this, so that's something that,
Right. I really think what we've ran into in the past is the meeting seems to go on for quite a while. And, we're asking staff to stay a considerable amount of time above and beyond their normal day's work. So that's why we moved it to 1:30. So if you could go along with 1:30 for a while, we could kind of look at it as.
Certainly, I
Because
can
to
do
change
that.
that later on in the year would just be a amendment resolution.
That's correct, Vice Mayor. If you want to keep the meeting time as is, if you want to change it at a later date, that can be done. And I think, the other, besides the time consideration, is currently it's monthly. Do you want to move to, bi-monthly, quarterly? What's your kind of meeting frequency?
Yeah, no, Public Works, I'm glad that we moved it to monthly, because there was a lot to cover. So I'd like to see the meetings monthly. We always have the option to cancel them if for some reason we don't feel that there's enough agenda items that we should be talking about.
can I ask a question or maybe make a suggestion? With the fire district, if we move it into the Public Works, does it have to be a joint city fire so that they have their board, or can we have it as a standing item so that the chief or whoever they want to come there, it's not a board versus?
Yeah, I think maybe rather than a joint meeting, because it would involve two of their board members, like the school district, we could coordinate with Chief Jenkins on just doing a kind of a fire district update, and he could in turn invite his board members to participate as time permits, rather than have it so that it's kind of it's an agenda item on the and I'm just, you're thinking finance, admin, and police, or are we thinking Public Works?
Works. If you do it as a standing item, I think it makes a lot of sense. That meeting just turns into a laundry list, and like some months, and then other months there's like 3 things, and you could cancel the meeting. So, but then when it's important, it's important. So, yeah, I just think that makes a lot of sense, having been on that committee before.
We could do like a standing item for updates from the fire district fire chief, and then attend as.
And if they need to have board members or want to have their board members, they can bring them, but it's not required.
And that's what we do at Planning and Sustainability too. We just have a standing item for like some big items that we're following, but there may not be anything going on that month. It makes a lot of sense for, especially if you combine it, just give it a standing item, and hopefully we can get the interest of the board members and they'll come.
With the joint city and school, it has it listed every 4 months. They have big staff turnover. We might want to bump that up a little bit at first and cancel meetings as needed. So I don't know if we want to do it quarterly. I don't think we need to go more than that.
Every 3 months? Okay.
I'm just because they're going to have a big turnover right now. They have board members and superintendent as well, just to start. So
we'll identify the schedule as every 3 months, so there'll be 4 meetings in a year rather than 3. Yeah.
Does that sound okay with you guys? Councilmember Morgenstern, is that okay with you? Yeah. And then the homelessness advisory group, I know I'm not on it, but monthly, I don't know if that's necessary. That was really to set up the plan, and we've gotten to a point now that the talks are a lot behind the scenes and going through, and a lot of work is done, but doesn't need the meeting as much. And you can always call special, so I would recommend you do quarterly. but that's up to you guys, because I'm not on that one. That one's Wheeler and Morgenstern.
I think quarterly would work good.
And if chief sees issues with staffing
Special
or
meeting.
special people, they can
Yeah,
always
there
call
just was a
special.
big push when the plan was being developed, so if there are major changes, you can always go back to more meetings, yeah.
The main players are really effective in our town right now, and because of chief, it's rolling pretty well compared to everywhere else, so.
We'll change the meeting type to every 4 months, or every 3 months.
Quarterly, yeah, on that.
And their meetings are the same as ours currently, the board meetings for the school. Sorry, I was looking at, sorry, my brain's skipping. For the school, so if those meetings, we just want to make sure they stay on the same date, not on Wednesdays like ours. Anything else from anyone else on these? Great, that was easy. Next.
Okay, and so the next part of this conversation is in regards to the 2023 regional board appointments. There's a fairly significant list of regional boards, but there's also a number of roles as liaison or other participatory roles, whether it's a board of director or a ledge committee. The packet does include a recommendation for all of the regional boards. Up before you, so we have Cloverdale Chamber of Commerce liaison. I have Vice Mayor Walter and Councilmember Wheeler as the alternate. It's at your pleasure if you want to just walk through. Want me to just walk through these, Mayor?
I don't think there's any really need to.
Okay.
Maybe we just have any questions, comments, or anything we want to change brought up first, because we all have it in front of us, that's good. Please, Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I've only listed 3, but I realize that Councilmember Bagby is picking up a lot of slack here, and Councilmember Cruz was very active in the regional boards. So I'm just kind of keeping myself open for any place where I can plug my name in. So Councilmember Bagby, if there's anything you think I can jump in here and be a representative, please shout out.
Questions? I'd like to request, this is for Morgenstern and Wheeler, the Cloverdale Rancheria Tribal Council. I would like to be part of that if someone doesn't want it. You're okay with that?
I'm fine with backing out of that, too.
One of you wants it more, to be the alternate with me?
Oh, I'll be the alternate.
I'm already the alternate.
Oh,
Oh, okay. So you're okay with me taking that spot, Councilmember?
yes.
Okay. Is there anything that you're not on that you would like to be on or anything along those lines?
Not that I can see.
I am also going to be submitting a letter of intent for the Sonoma County Ag Preservation Open Space District for their committee. And so if I could do that, I'll be doing that tomorrow. I'd like to be part of that as well.
Right, there's the chair of the Mayor and Council Members Association has requested letters of intent.
Was it Ozzy that had that seat? I don't remember. But
Yeah, I think it was Ozzy. What's referred to as the Citizens Oversight Committee for the Sonoma County Ag and Open Space District. Those letters of intent are requested to be submitted to the chair of City of Healdsburg, City Clerk, by this Friday. And happy to coordinate with any council member who would like to submit a letter of intent. So, coordinating with Councilmember Bagby on letter of interest for the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit for appointment by the Mayor and Council Members Association, and likewise a mayor with you on letter of intent to serve on the Oversight Committee for the Ag and Open Space.
So Councilmember Bagby, you'll be submitting for SMART, right?
And I'll offer up the same as Vice Mayor did. If anyone has any any reason they can't do the meetings or needs somebody to pick up some slack, I will make myself available. So thank you. Good, David?
So if council agrees with the recommendations, we will bring these back at your next meeting, adopting them by basically the regional board appointments as well as the subcommittee appointments with meeting dates and times by resolution. There is in your packet Mike, if you can pull up attachment 4, in the packet, it lists most of the meeting dates for the council subcommittees. I did note, I think there was interest by our community development planning staff to move the planning commission meetings from 6:30 to 6, kind of consistent with the city council meetings, so moving them up 30 minutes. But I did note on the schedule where there were some possible cancellations based on kind of past practice of the council. And you can certainly provide any feedback there if and some of that is, again, based on what's coming before us at that time, but also looking at dates that may correspond with a holiday or in close proximity to a holiday. But this would actually serve as the attachment to the resolution that would set meeting dates, times, and so this is what we would be adjusting to adopt by resolution.
Question for the new council members on the regional boards. For example, Northern Sonoma County Air Pollution Control District is Councilmember Wheeler, and Russian River Watershed is Councilmember Morgan's. So, David, how do you plan on bringing them up to speed on how to get to the meetings? Are they still on Zoom? Is there a stack of...
Actually, Andy, or it's now Vanessa, so we actually have a really great relationship with Russian River Watershed Association because we're fortunate enough that Vanessa, I believe, is still kind of the acting executive director. They have a manual, which I don't know if I was instrumental in creating it, but maybe I was why they created it. But they have a manual and orientation, and Andy or Vanessa usually sit down with new members and walk them through what the board is, because some of it is just like, drinking out of the fire hose. It's like, why am I here? And what are these issues? And what is everybody talking about? And what's a water quality permit, et cetera. So, at that agency, as well as the air district, they have a board member manual and an orientation.
Now, do they still have Zoom, do you know?
For now, it's a really good question because I think a lot of people are transitioning, and March is the date that keeps coming up for me, and then we'll see what happens. But right now, I presume their first meetings are going to be Zoom, or they're going to be what they tell you it is when they send the agenda out. So they'll give you an agenda report with either the Zoom link and or the location. And the air district office is located in downtown Healdsburg, and the Russian River Watershed meetings, they're still occurring at the Windsor City Hall, unless I don't think it's underwater yet, David. I think they're still in good shape. So yeah, the Russian River Watershed meetings are going to be at the Windsor City Hall.
Right, and we've coordinated with our city engineer and Russian River Watershed Association to provide a presentation update to council at your next meeting. So they'll give you an overview of planned activities and their programs. So it'll be a good opportunity to introduce Councilmember Morgenstern to.
Just another note on the schedule, and I'll work with Mike on this. I know I have at least 2 Cal City's executive board meetings that I'll be traveling for, so I will have to Zoom in for those, and I'll just work with staff to make that happen. But I just looked at the schedule earlier this week, and I was like, oh, okay, I've got at least 2 conflicts for council meetings, so I'll let you know.
You good, David? Great. All right. Next is subcommittee report. You need public comment. Action taken. There's no one raising their hands either way, so I can see it right there.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're right,
so-
Mayor. No action taken, so it was just more of a discussion. Sorry.
No, thank you, Jose. I really appreciate that. Subcommittee reports, we're going to skip over that since we don't have them set. Once the meetings are set, people start going, it's going to be great. Council reports, the written was sent in. Does anyone else have anything? No letters or support or opposition. City manager, you're up. City manager report.
Mayor, Council, I think really covered current update with the storm update. That's been our primary focus is responding to the current storm event. I do have, when you're ready, just a quick update on impacts to our water supply.
Yeah, please.
I'm going to do a quick share screen here.
I'm going to guess that it's good,
Very good.
looking pretty good.
Just received an update based on the storm events, what the impact is on our water supply. So, to date, in our current water year which started October 1st, we've received 24.25 inches of rain. As indicated on the chart before you, it's 125% of average. So coming out of the drought, this is really, really good news. What we're seeing at Lake Mendocino is that the current the water levels are at roughly 120% of the flood control pool. No indication of flooding at this point. There's sufficient capacity to support the amount of water, but basically we've closed the gap in the current drought. Or likewise, Lake Sonoma, which was witnessing really dire levels, is now up to 72.6% of its current supply at our 177,000 acre feet with a supply capacity of 245,000. It was on December, I think it was December 11th, it was down around 95,000 acre feet. So we've seen a near, not quite, but a near doubling of the amount of water in Lake Sonoma. So that bodes well for our the community south of Cloverdale. We will be, in response to this, bringing forward a resolution recommending moving our current water shortage emergency stage 4 to a stage 3. Very likely we would support reducing it even further. The stage 3 currently aligns with the governor's drought declaration that was done earlier this year of 25%. So it's just really to align with the state and to lower drought emergency. I suspect that once all the storms are over, we may see the governor declare an end of the drought. But with that said, there's a number of the other larger reservoirs within Sonoma County, continue to see positive progress. So, I'm sure he's going to look at it at a statewide level and see, what the impact on all the reservoirs are in terms of making for future decisions about drought declarations. But with that, that's just really good news that we're seeing with our local water supply, and I think it'll support a change in the water shortage emergency, which we plan to bring forward at your next meeting.
I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know if you know the answer. I hope you do. You talked about the flood control pool on Lake Mendocino, and it was at 119% for. The way I understand it is there's different levels that they allow us to have on reserve, basically, in the lake until between now and March 1st. And March 1st, it changes where you can hold more because of the storms that come later. Do you know anything about that? Because, if you looked at right now, you could say, okay, well, it reached the dock, but it could still go up another 10 feet in the lake, and it's 120%. Is that percentage based because of the time of year? Do you know anything about how that works?
Yeah, it's based on so the Lake Mendocino is jointly managed by the Army Corps of Engineers and Sonoma Water. With the current conditions of the reservoir, Sonoma Water turned over reservoir management responsibilities to the Corps. The Corps does have a historic pool that they try to manage the reservoir to. What we've been tracking these percentages, and we've been seeing in our weekly newsletter, is really based on the average water supply. So we've been looking at kind of the reservoir level relative to what we would see in a average period of time. But there's quite a bit of additional capacity that is available. So, for instance, in the 2019 storm event, which it really rapidly brought up the reservoir levels in Lake Sonoma above that 100% level, but there was sufficient capacity to support those levels. We've also seen this change in management philosophy. It's based on what's called the forecast-informed reservoir operations. So what they're trying to do is take a look out and manage both flood flows and future, maintaining that water for future water supply. And it's a delicate management that they have to kind of, try to make sure that they don't get to a point where the reservoir is so full that there's no flood capacity for future storms. We're still early in the precipitation year, so we could get a lot more. So they may have to release some, but it's always it's kind of an art and a science how much they release. And I think Kevin has it up. It looks like the top of the flood control pool is about 110,000 acre feet, and so there's still quite a bit of capacity there. But if we keep getting these atmospheric river events, they could trigger the Corps to start releasing water. Obviously there's some concerns about that because with high flows, it could create potential downstream flooding conditions. But with that said, they don't want to release it and then have us go into a time where we don't get any further precipitation for the rest of the year, and we've just released a bunch of water that could have been saved. Something I'd probably want to defer to the experts to better give you a better explanation, but that's kind of a general overview of some of the operational issues that I know the Corps and the Water Agency engage in about how to manage that precious water resource.
Yeah, if I may, David, I think one of the best accomplishments that Sonoma Water has had in the last couple of years is really getting off of that just a hardcore schedule that the Army Corps of Engineers was like, this date happens and the flow release. So I mean, it's responsive. It takes into account current atmospheric conditions and long-range forecasting. And I was just thinking that and I've seen several presentations on just the huge difference between how they're authorized to release the water now and just compared to the draconian standard that was set up in the 50s or 60s or something like that. That would probably be another topic that Vanessa should present on to us, is just exactly how those Lake Mendocino water releases work now and how it's going to affect our planning in the future. That just would be a good item to add to her presentation.
Kevin, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's nice that we're going to be lowering our drought status to a 3, and the governor may be declaring an end to the drought. But I know, David, we've talked about this, and I think the council has talked about it as well. We're going to have another drought, whether it be 2 years, 3 years from now. And just because we have plenty of water now, it doesn't mean we can take our eye off the ball of how do we get prepared for the next drought. Are we going to wean ourselves off the wells that are on the river and go into an aquifer? What exactly are we going to do? What's the plan? We know there's water up in the hills. Some of the open space districts, Melanie, I know you know they have wells that produce, and it's kind of like, how do we get our arms around those? So it's nice that the drought's coming to an end, but we really need to keep the drought in our guns.
Completely concur, Vice Mayor, and I think with council's leadership, we're going to be implementing a number of programs that will continue for better water management, our meter project with better SCADA operation, rehabbing and replacing our wells. There's just a number of projects. And then, of course, still continue to look at potable offsets for how we irrigate our parks and also reducing the amount of water use in our parks and public facilities, will all help to reduce our water use and be more resilient. So I know those are all things that we'll continue to pursue and monitor as part of the Public Works Subcommittee.
And I'm going to throw you under the bus real quick and ask you to respond to the car wash situation so that the council is apprised of everything going on, why and how we got to this place, so that it's factual information for everyone.
Yeah, I'll do my best. We did cite the car wash owner. We had a hearing, a code enforcement hearing. He did not show up. We had to allow him 30 days after that to clean it. He didn't clean it. We did get an award from the code enforcement hearing officer of somewhere around $25,000 for what had been done, the neglect to date. We also took the initiative and had it cleaned out with Advanced Earthworks, a contractor who's been working out there the last couple of days, and I think he's almost done. That will also be, like we have done in the past, tagged on to what he owes us. There'll be a lien put on the property, so eventually when the property sells, we'll get our money back. We did take the added step of putting the concrete blocks out in front because people just keep driving in there and dumping stuff, so we're hoping that will help mitigate that. We've been working with Lieutenant Parker, who's given us some good ideas on how to make it safe. We're going to put some reflective barriers on those concrete so people don't turn in there and accidentally hit them in the night. We've put no trespassing signs up and tow-away signs as well, so now that we have tagged it as no trespassing, we can enter the property as need be. There was a lot of stuff in there, and it was all over the place, and going down, there was an old trailer, almost like a 18-wheeler trailer in there, washing machine, car seats. So it's a real mess. There was some actual hazards where there were some open pits in the bays that were just, I don't know how deep they were, but they were filled with water. Obviously, we don't want someone falling in there, so I'm not sure if he's done, but he's been working out there 2 days, and I'll go check it out tomorrow. So we're real happy with the way it is, and hopefully it'll be a safer environment. I think we decided not to fence it just because it's so large of an area, and I think the idea of just having a fence wasn't really aesthetically pleasing, so we kind of made the decision not to fence it, and we put the concrete blocks, and we'll continue to monitor it. Hopefully with the blocks, I mean, it's not going to stop people from walking in there, but at least people won't be able to drive in there and dump stuff in the night, so.
The open pits, are we going to put metal plates over the?
Yeah, yes.
If it gets bad again, we can always come back and make suggestions to do the fence or whatever, but it's a great first. We had somebody that dumped a car there last night. They drove it across someone else's property to get it in there, so.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage of that opportunity, so
I was
there's more
ama-
blocks and more things coming in.
I was amazed at the amount of stuff that came out of that thing.
He had to bring a 20-yard dumpster to
Was
fill
it
it.
way
from
back the
trash.
end of the property? That's what
He
the
went
voice
as
was
far as he
for?
could for what his bid would allow, and it went property to the north as well, all the way back. He cleaned up as much trash as he could. He lifted all the vegetation so that nobody could be hiding in it or sleeping under it, things like that, because they're really, if you got in there, I went in there a few times now and cleaned it a couple times myself. It's disgusting. It is a hazardous waste back there. It is horrible. And so to allow that, we just couldn't do it any longer. And what people don't know, I found out Kevin was there, the water from car wash runs down onto Tarman behind. So just, there's no recycling. It's just a drain that runs out. It doesn't go into the sewer. And so anything that's hazardous in those pits goes out in front of people's houses. So it's a good thing that Kevin's taken and David have taken the initiative to make this happen. could demo the whole thing right now, but we can't. Jose, it is your turn. Evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor. Sorry I'm not there in person. And just no real comments. Just one of the things that I heard was the March 1st date that's upcoming regarding in-person meetings. Just as a reminder, the governor is set to end the emergency for COVID on the end of February, which means that AB 361, so those findings we make every month in order to continue allowing the council members to participate on the Zoom meetings without posting where they are, that will end March 1st. So there is other legislation allowing council members to join by Zoom and not post where they're calling from in certain situations. One of them being if you're for example, at a conference or in travel representing or business related to the city. So that is exception. So Councilmember Bagby will talk about when you're out, when you have some of those conflicts because you're going to be at different conferences. The existing the Brown Act still allows, like before, to post where you're going to be calling from. So whenever somebody's going to miss a meeting and wants to participate, for example, if you're going to be on vacation but you want to participate, you still want to participate, obviously work with us. And we'll definitely help with giving you the options on how to properly post so you can participate remotely. And that's all the comments. And one last thing, I just, again, great to hear all the things that Cloverdale has been doing regarding the storm and with the quick action of staff and calling the emergency. It was impressive to watch all the work that staff has put in to make sure that Cloverdale and its residents are safe. That's my comment, Mayor.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate it. Future agenda items. Does anyone have anything? Just to see if I have anything necessary. Perfect. With that, the meeting is adjourned at 7:33. Thank you, everyone, for being here.